The people who insisted on shutting down our schools during the pandemic are responsible for the largest learning loss in modern history. It was dumb, dumb, dumb. And again, I'm not saying the people that made that decision to shut down the schools in America are the dumbest people in the world, but they better hope the dumbest people in the world don't die. High school seniors throughout our country are looking forward to graduation, which is going to happen here in the next few months, in some cases weeks. The sad reality, though, is that some of these high school seniors won't be able to read. They won't be able to read their diplomas. In fact, students in several states have actually filed lawsuits against their schools for failing to teach them basic skills like reading and math. One student plaintiff actually alleged in his petition that he can't spell his name. And he's a high school senior. And it brings me no pleasure to point this out. We all know we have a problem with elementary and secondary education in America, but the truth is that some, not all, but some of our schools here in America have become failure factories. And our kids are falling behind their global competitors in just about every category, not just reading, not just writing, not just math, also science. We live in the freest, most prosperous country in all of human history. And yet, American kids rank 22nd, not in all 195 countries in the world, but 22nd among developed nations in terms of our education achievement. It's embarrassing, and the American people deserve better. So do American kids. In 1979, President Carter established the Department of Education. As you know, Mr. President, it's a cabinet-level agency. Its purpose was to improve education outcomes throughout the country. I want to read you what the department's mission is supposed to be. I'm quoting here. The Department of Education is supposed to, quote, promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access, end quote. Pretty words. Pretty words. That's all they are. Just empty, pretty words. The results have been anything but excellent. This chart represents reading skills among our kids in America. Down here, mathematics skills. This is when we started the Department of Education, way back here, 1979. This is where we are today. The line, we're doing a little better in math, but the line for reading is basically flat. And the line for mathematics is not exactly steep. The truth is that our scores, both for reading and math, have not improved appreciably in decades. And any progress that we have seen from the Department of Education's long tenure, which is very little, you can see the numbers, they speak for themselves. They disappeared during the pandemic when people in power decided to close down our schools. Funding for the Department of Education has far outpaced spending in the rest of the federal government. If you compare spending just for the Department of Education to spending in the rest of the federal government, the difference is dramatic. Since 1980, the Department of Education spending has increased by 370%. 370%. All other forms of spending have increased on average about 195%. Yet the scores remain stagnant, both for reading and for math. Now, looking at these numbers, I think it's pretty clear why President Trump is calling for us to shut down the Department of Education altogether. He wants to, as we know, he wants to return education to our states. And Louisiana provides a perfect example of why that's a good idea. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that Louisiana public education and secondary education is perfect. We're not well, but we are doing much better. Over the past few years, Louisiana has actually outpaced the rest of the country in several measures of academic improvement and academic achievement in our K through 12 schools. According to the nation's report card, that's what everybody looks to. The nation's report card is put out every year by the Department of Education, grading our states on progress in elementary and secondary education. It might be the only decent thing the Department of Education does. I forget the formal name of it, but we all refer to it as the nation's report card. And according to that report card, Louisiana led the country in reading growth in 2024. And I want to show you that here in a second in the chart. But first, I want to go back. I should have emphasized this. Once again, these are the average reading and math scores for all the kids in America since the Department of Education was established. Flatline, mostly flatline, but look what happened here. A dramatic drop. Dramatic drop in both math and education scores. That's the pandemic. That's what happened when people in power decided to shut down our schools. Now, it was more than one person, I understand that. But it was, for all the people who made this decision, they should hide their heads in a bag. I mean, look what happened. We shut down our schools. We had the largest learning loss in modern history. That's just a fact. Now, some people are going to disagree with me. And I'm not saying that if they disagree with me, they're dumb. But I'm saying if they disagree with me, they better hope the dumbest person in the world doesn't die, because they're going to take their place. But I want to come back. Let me go to Louisiana for a second. We didn't shut down our schools, but for a short period of time. And you can see the results in this chart. Between 2019 and 2024, Louisiana fourth graders went from ranking dead last in the country for reading proficiency. Here we are, 48th, to ranking 16th. I'm very proud of that. Math scores also steadily increased. Louisiana climbed from being ranked 50th to 38th. We went from 50th to 38th and 48th to 16th best in our country. Louisiana made this growth happen during the pandemic and afterwards. The pandemic was probably one of the most challenging educational periods in our country's history. Parents remember it. I remember it. Even if your kids are grown, you remember it. It was difficult for kids to try to learn from home. It was a disaster. Shutting down these schools was a disaster, and American kids suffered because of it. According to the Education Recovery Scorecard, which measures how much of the loss we were able to gain back, American students, I'm talking about all kids throughout America, are still 1/2 of a grade behind where students were when they were tested before the pandemic. On average, we lost 1/2 a grade. In many states, the academic loss was a full year. And that means that fourth graders today can only read as well as third graders prior to the pandemic. This is an entire generation of kids who fell behind because our people in power decided to shut down our schools. And many of our states, despite the billions of dollars that we appropriated to help them, have failed to catch up. I'm going to say it again. The people who insisted on shutting down our schools during the pandemic are responsible for the largest learning loss in modern history. It was dumb, dumb, dumb. And again, I'm not saying the people that made that decision to shut down the schools in America are the dumbest people in the world, but they better hope the dumbest people in the world don't die. Louisiana, though, managed to thrive during this period and afterwards. Why is that? Because we looked around at what our friends and our neighbors were doing in America and across the world. And we didn't go with the flow. Only dead fish go with the flow. We didn't go with the flow. We said, let's look at what other countries are doing and working and what other states are doing and working, and that's what we did. First, we started giving our teachers the tools they needed to teach, and that's important. In 2021, I remember it like it was yesterday, our state legislature passed a law mandating that all K through 3 teachers receive advanced training in the very best methods of teaching reading. Reading is fundamental. If you can't read, nothing else matters in terms of educational progress. So we sought out the best methods for teaching kids from kindergarten to the 3rd grade, the best methods to teach reading. We found them, and we educated our teachers in those methods, and it worked. We tried to make it the case so that no kid makes it to graduation day in Louisiana without being able to read. In fact, we passed another law a couple of years ago. I worked very hard on this. It says if you're in the 3rd grade, at the end of the 3rd grade, you're going to be tested for reading. And if you can't read at a 3rd grade level, we're going to retest you again. And if you can't read at a 3rd grade level at the end of the 3rd grade, we're going to test you one more time. And if you still fail, you're not going to the 4th grade. You're going to stay in the 3rd grade until you learn how to read. You might be 16 years old in the 3rd grade, but by God, you're not going to the 4th grade until you can learn how to read. Now, we don't just leave the kids on their own. If they can't read at the end of the 3rd grade after being tested a couple of times, we give them what we call high-dosage tutoring. We tutor them and tutor them and tutor them until they can read. And then they can move on. Because, you know, when kids drop out of school, kids don't drop out of school in the 10th or the 11th and the 12th grade. They drop out of school in the 2nd grade, in the 3rd grade, when they can't learn how to read and nobody cares. They're just socially promoted. We stopped doing that in Louisiana. We also started giving parents a choice in public education. You know, competition makes us better. Makes you better, makes me better. Competition makes all of us better. Most parents, not all, most parents are far more invested in their kids' academic success than any teacher, I don't care how well-meaning the teacher is, than any teacher, any school administrator, or any federal bureaucrat. And most parents, not all unfortunately, but most parents in America do not want their kids to be stuck in a school where violence is common and learning is rare. They don't. Now, several states throughout the country, I'm going to mention 4 in particular, but they're not the only ones. I'm going to mention Florida, Iowa, North Dakota, and Utah. Congratulations to them all. They have implemented successfully school choice programs. Utah's may be the best, Mr. President. This gives parents the ability, just what it says, it gives parents a choice. They can send their kid to a public school. They can send their kid to a private school. They can send their child to a charter school. Charter schools are tuition free. Charter schools are public schools. They're tuition free, but they're not run by the education bureaucracy. They're almost always run by parents and caring adults. They don't have to follow all the red tape in their local school district. They can experiment. They're independent. They're free. And they work. Every state, every one of these states that I mentioned, their programs are different. But each state that I mentioned, and I want to mention them again because they deserve praise, Utah, North Carolina, North Dakota, Iowa, and Florida, they all have a few things in common. They all allow parents to decide which school will get their kids' share of state and federal tax dollars. As you know, Mr. President, we fund our public schools through 3 sources of revenue. The largest is usually local government. In my state, about half of the money comes from local government. About 40% comes from the state government, and about 10% comes from the federal government. So it's mostly local money, but it's also state money to a large extent, and some federal money. But these are all tax dollars. In these states that I just described, if parents are happy with the current public school that their child is enrolled in, they can tell the state, okay, spend that money per child that I just described in my child's school. I'm happy with my current school. But if the parents aren't happy, they can seek another school that's a better fit and move that money. They can choose to take their child's funding to a different school to give that kid a better outcome. This gives parents a choice. But it also, you know what else it does? It gets some of our schools off their ice-cold, lazy butts. It makes schools compete. And competition makes all of us better. There have been a number of studies of school choice states, and almost all of them have found that these programs, this program of choice, you get to choose which public school you want your child to go to, or you can send your child to a private school. This choice results in higher test scores, higher parental satisfaction, and higher student safety. Last year, Louisiana joined the choice movement. I'm very proud of that. Our legislature passed a school choice program. We call it the Gator Act. Starting this fall, certain students, not all of our kids, we're going to eventually ramp it up so that it does impact all of our kids, but certain of our kids will be able to tap into state-funded education savings accounts that parents can use to pay for their child to attend a different public or a different private or a different charter school. And our goal is 3 years. In 3 years, every student in Louisiana will be eligible to participate in this choice program. Now, I want to say it again. I'm not saying Louisiana schools are perfect. I am not saying that. But it is undeniable that we're on the right track. We are. We stayed open for the most part during the pandemic. We've trained our teachers. We've established standards. You can't go to the 4th grade till you can read. And we've implemented parental choice. I think President Trump, and I don't want to just limit this to the Republicans. Many of my Democratic colleagues believe in choice as well. That sometimes they can't be as vocal about it, but I know I've talked to them. They understand, as does the White House, that America's future is sitting in these classrooms every day throughout the country. I've said it a zillion times, a squillion times in Louisiana. The key to Louisiana's future is not the price of oil. It's not what the unemployment rate is. It's not who the senator is or the governor is. It's education. And the status quo in America isn't working. We didn't make it any better as a result of our behavior with respect to the pandemic, and we're behind, but we can catch up if we just do the right things. One of those things is returning education to the states. I hope we do dismantle the Department of Education. It's basically a conduit for money, except that money goes through the Department of Education and the 4,000 employees there, and they all put a condition on the money as if they knew what was best for each state. They don't. We ought to dismantle the Department of Education and send that money directly to the states. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your courtesy, and congratulations on the progress that the wonderful state of Utah has made in elementary and secondary education. Mr. President, I yield the floor.